Okay, so you just paid about $7 for a Whopper. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you paid $5.79 because you live in South Bend, Indiana. Maybe you paid $8.19 because you live in San Francisco. Maybe you paid $3.99 because it was a Wednesday and you ordered it through the app. Same quarter pound of flame-broiled beef. Same sesame bun. 4 different prices. Here is the first strange thing about the Whopper. There is no such thing as the price of a Whopper. Burger King publishes no national number because Burger King does not set the price. The person who owns your Burger King sets the price. And that one sentence, the fact that somebody else owns your Burger King, is the entire economics of this burger. Because the numbers underneath it have gone insane. A price tracking survey found the Whopper jumped roughly 86% between 2019 and 2024. Regular inflation over that stretch was about 22%. The beef inside it is now the most expensive beef America has ever recorded. The company that invented it is in the middle of a $2 billion rescue of its own brand. Its biggest franchisee collapsed into the arms of the parent company. At least 377 Burger King restaurants went through bankruptcy in a single year. And in August 2026, this same battered burger chain took back the title of America's #2 burger chain for the first time in 6 years. Somebody is making money on your $7. It is mostly not who you think. Here is what you probably assume. You assume Burger King sold you that burger. Burger King bought the beef, Burger King hired the teenager at the register, Burger King pays the rent on the building, and your $7 lands in Burger King's pocket. One company, one burger, one transaction. That is how it looks from the drive-thru. Almost none of that is true. Burger King does not sell burgers. It sells the right to sell burgers. About 95% of Burger King restaurants belong to franchisees. Local operators who buy the name, build the store with their own money, buy their own beef, hire their own crew, and then send a cut of every single sale up to the parent company, a Toronto corporation called Restaurant Brands International. The store is not Burger King's. The risk is not Burger King's. The $7 is not Burger King's, only the skim is. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where your $7 goes, line by line, from the audited books of a real Burger King operator. What a quarter pound of beef actually costs in the worst beef market since the 1950s. How big the parent company's cut is on every sale, forever. Why Burger King restaurants kept going bankrupt while the parent grew its operating income 8% a year. What the same burger costs in Zurich, and what is missing from it in Mumbai. And why the burger that started at 37 cents now costs more than it did in 1957, even after you adjust for inflation. Start with the burger itself, because the burger is real even if the price is chaos. The build has barely changed since 1,957, a quarter pound of beef, weighed before cooking, run through a gas flame broiler on a conveyor chain, on a toasted sesame bun with tomato, lettuce, mayo, ketchup, pickles, and white onion. The broilers come from 2 equipment makers, Duke and Nieco, and they push about 8 Whopper patties through the flames in 4 minutes. Burger King once claimed there are 221,000 ways to order it. The lawyers presumably counted. Now price the ingredients. The beef is the story of the decade. America's cattle herd is down to 86.2 million head, the smallest count since 1951. 8 years of drought shrank the pastures, and a flesh-eating parasite called the New World screwworm closed the border to over 1 million Mexican cattle a year. Result: grocery store ground beef hit $6.89 a pound in July 2026, the highest since records began, up 83% from a decade ago. The lean wholesale trimmings that become fast food patties crossed $400 per 100 pounds for the first time ever. At those wholesale prices, the quarter pound of beef in your Whopper costs the restaurant roughly $1. Add the bun, the produce, the mayo, and the packaging, and the whole physical Whopper runs somewhere around $2, using the industry's normal food cost math. That is an estimate. Burger King publishes no recipe costs. But the shape is clear. You paid $7, the food cost $2, and here is the strange part. The restaurant selling it to you is barely making anything. We know this because one Burger King operator was so big, it had to publish its books. Carroll's Restaurant Group ran more than 1,000 Burger Kings, the largest franchisee in the system, and it filed audited numbers with the SEC. Its last full year of reports, 2023, reads like a receipt for your Whopper. An average Carroll's Burger King sold about $1.76 million of food a year. Out of every dollar of that, 27.8 cents went to food and packaging, the beef, the buns, the wrappers. 32.4 cents went to labor. The crew behind the counter is the single most expensive ingredient in the burger. It costs more than the burger. 6.9 cents went to rent. 4.1 cents went to advertising. That is the fund that paid for the Whopper jingle you could not escape during the playoffs. And about 15.6 cents went to everything else: utilities, maintenance, insurance, and the royalty flowing up to the parent company. What was left as restaurant-level profit? About 13 cents on the dollar, roughly $230,000 per store. And restaurant level is the generous number. It is measured before corporate overhead, before the debt payments on the millions it costs to build a store, before taxes, before the owner pays themselves a salary. At the company level, across the whole 1,000-store operation, Carroll's cleared under 8 cents on the dollar. Put that on your $7 Whopper. About $1.95 of food, about $2.27 of labor, half a dollar of rent, roughly 60 cents up to the parent company's machine, and well under $1 sticking to the store that actually made your lunch. The person flipping the burger earns more of your $7 than the person who owns the restaurant. Now follow the 60 cents, because that is where the actual business lives. Burger King's official franchise terms: $50,000 up front for the name, a 20-year contract, and then 4.5% of every sale as a royalty, plus another 4.5% into the advertising fund. 9% off the top of everything, forever. Sell a Whopper, the parent gets paid. Lose money that month, the parent still gets paid. Stack up all those slices and the machine comes into view. In 2025, Burger King's North American restaurants rang up $11.6 billion of sales. The parent company booked $1.5 billion of that as its own revenue and turned $468 million into segment operating income. Across all 4 of its brands, Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes, and Firehouse Subs, Restaurant Brands International collected $9.4 billion in revenue on nearly $47 billion in system-wide sales. This machine was built deliberately. In 2010, the Brazilian private equity firm 3G Capital bought Burger King for about $3.25 billion, $4 billion counting debt. It sold all 1,387 company-owned restaurants to franchisees, pushed the costs onto them, and kept the royalty stream. Then it merged with Tim Hortons in a deal worth around $11 billion, with Warren Buffett putting up $3 billion in preferred stock at 9% interest. Compare McDonald's. McDonald's owns the land under its restaurants and charges franchisees rent on top of royalties. Nearly 2/3 of what its franchisees send in is rent. McDonald's is a landlord that sells burgers. Burger King's parent owns almost no dirt at all. It is a name that collects a toll. And here is the cost of that difference. An average McDonald's in America sells about $4 million a year. An average Burger King sells about 1.6. Which brings us to the part of the system nobody puts in the commercials. What happened to the people who actually own the restaurants? 2023 was the worst year in the history of Burger King franchising. Tom's King, 90 stores, bankrupt in January. Meridian Restaurants, about 120 stores, bankrupt in March. Burger King's own corporate office ended up buying 32 of its restaurants out of the wreckage. EYM King shut all 26 of its Michigan stores. Premier Kings, 172 stores, bankrupt in October after its owner died. Counted up, and at least 377 Burger King restaurants moved through Chapter 11 in a single year, the most of any restaurant brand in America. In April 2025, it kept going. Consolidated Burger Holdings, 57 stores in Florida and Georgia, went down with $67 million in sales and a $12.5 million loss. The parent company's own disclosures explain why. In 2022, the average Burger King operator cleared about $140,000 of store-level profit. On a store that costs up to several million to build, every one of those bankrupt operators kept paying 9% off the top until the day the filings hit. And through that same stretch, Restaurant Brands grew its adjusted operating income roughly 8% a year, 3 years running. That is not a scandal. Nobody broke a rule. It is just the shape of the deal. The parent owns the upside of the brand, and the operators own the downside of the stores. The royalty machine does not have bad quarters. Its customers do. Then the machine did something franchising almost never does. It swallowed its own biggest customer. In January 2024, Restaurant Brands announced it was buying Carroll's, the 1,000-store franchisee whose books you just saw, for about $1 billion. Not a rescue, a plan. Pour $500 million into remodeling 600 of those restaurants, then sell them back, refranchised in small batches to fresh local operators, keeping only about 300 as a corporate lab. The company that spent 14 years selling restaurants to operators started buying them back to fix what the operators could no longer afford. Meanwhile, the Whopper itself went to court. In 2022, 4 customers, eventually 19 across 13 states, sued Burger King in federal court in Miami, claiming the burgers on the menu boards were photographed about 35% bigger than the ones in the bag, with patties that overflow the bun in the picture and stop at its edge in your hands. Burger King argued nobody could reasonably be deceived by food photography. Judge Roy Altman disagreed twice, writing that it was plausible some reasonable consumers could be misled and that the claims go beyond mere exaggeration or puffery. Then, in December 2025, he refused to certify it as a nationwide class action, reasoning that every customer saw a different photo and got a different burger. That pulled most of its teeth. The individual claims survive. Burger King's position, for the record, the patties in the ads are the same patties in the restaurants. A burger photographed larger than it is, sold by a company that owns no restaurants, cooked by an operator who keeps less of the price than the beef costs. Everything about the Whopper is slightly different from what it appears. Except, oddly, the flame. The gas broiler is real, and it has been since 1957. So, why is this the comeback story of 2026? Because the parent finally spent money on the stores. The plan is called Reclaim the Flame. $400 million announced in 2022, $150 for advertising, $250 for kitchens and remodels, then another $300 million in 2024, plus the $1 billion for Carroll's, and $500 million to rebuild its stores. Call it around $2 billion to unneglect the estate. Remodeled stores are lifting sales by the mid-teens in year 1. The weakest locations are simply closing, roughly 200 a year, from over 7,000 U.S. stores down to about 6,600. The Whopper got its first real overhaul in years, in early 2026. A premium bun, a creamier mayo, a box designed to keep it warm, overseen by a chef hired from Popeyes. The price war stayed on. The $5 Your Way meal launched 2 weeks before McDonald's could get its own $5 deal out the door, then 2 for $5, and the app's $3.99 Whopper Wednesdays. It worked. Same-store sales went from negative in early 2025 to plus 5.8 in the first quarter of 2026 to plus 8.5 in the second, beating the burger industry by 9 points. On the 7th of August, 2026, the numbers made it official. Burger King passed Wendy's to become America's number 2 burger chain again, for the first time in 6 years. The turnaround is real. Just notice who paid for the decade before it. The operators who went down waiting for it. Now zoom out, because the Whopper is a world currency and the exchange rate is brutal. A 22-country price index ran the numbers in April 2026. The most expensive Whopper on earth is in Switzerland, about $10.11. Western Europe averages over $8.50. The United States sits near $6.79 on that index. Japan, $3.93, roughly half the American price. And the cheapest Whopper in the world is in India, at about $2.56. Except the Indian Whopper is not the same burger. Burger King India has never served beef or pork since it opened in 2014. Out of respect for Hindu and Muslim customers, the Whopper there comes in chicken, mutton, or veg. The cheapest Whopper on the planet contains none of the thing the Whopper was invented to hold. Then run the comparison through time instead of space. 1,957. Gainesville, Florida. Co-founder James McLemore watches a rival stand, sell giant burgers, builds a bigger one, names it the Whopper. prices it at 37 cents. It stayed 37 cents for 13 straight years. Adjust that launch price for inflation, and you get about $4.27 in today's money. The average American Whopper now costs half again more than that. The burger did not just track inflation, it outran it, by design, in an industry where fast food prices have climbed about twice as fast as everything else since 2014. And Americans noticed. In a 2024 survey, 78% said fast food now feels like a luxury. For a chain whose whole identity is a big, cheap burger, that is the crisis underneath the crisis. So line up your $7 one last time. About $2 of it is food. $1 of that, the most expensive beef in American history. 2.25 is the crew. Half a dollar is the rent. 60-odd cents rides the royalty rail to a parent company in Toronto that owns the name, the recipe, and the flame, and almost nothing else. And the store itself, the actual building with the actual broiler, keeps less than $1, which is why so many of the people who bet on it went broke waiting for the comeback that finally came. The Whopper turned 69 this year. It has been a 37-cent giant, a courtroom exhibit, a meme jingle, and now the engine of the unlikeliest turnaround in fast food. Through all of it, the burger itself barely changed. A quarter pound of beef through an open flame. What changed is everything wrapped around it. Who owns the store, who carries the risk, and how many hands reach into the bag before it gets to you. McDonald's built an empire by owning the land under the burger. Burger King's owners built one by owning nothing but the name above it. Both of them get paid before the cook does. One company sells the burger, another sells the right to sell it. You paid $7 and you paid both.